This is Adesina Koiki, and we're getting ALOST in the shuffle for the first time. Our debut show live at arenas, 15 minutes talking about sports with some of the leading journalists in the country, or in my studio talking sports for about 15 minutes. But obviously, we're not in a studio. We're at TD Garden in Boston, Massachusetts, getting ready for the NBA regular season opener, 76ers, Boston Celtics. Pleased to be joined by Jared Weiss of The Athletic. Thank you so very much for the time. The Boston Bureau of The Athletic. First of all, Jared, thank you so very much for joining us. And time just flies by. We're back here once again.
I can't believe it. I'm part of a bureau, apparently. That's exciting news.
Oh, absolutely.
And yeah, it feels like we just finished up here at must have been 5 in the morning when we said goodbye last time, and now all of a sudden we're back and the season's going to start. I'm excited.
You're excited, and I'm sure every Celtics fan is excited. Kyrie Irving's back from injury. Gordon Hayward's back from injury. 1 game away from the NBA Finals, that Game 7 loss against the Cleveland Cavaliers. But given all of the excitement, is the most exciting part for the Boston Celtics this season is that it is now a LeBron James-less Eastern Conference?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's that, and then on the flip side of that coin, they're finally good enough where they feel like they're a legitimate finals contender. I think last year, even if that team was fully healthy, nobody had that real confidence that they were going to be the real title contender, and they got way closer than any of us expected with 2 superstars out of the game. Now that they're fully healthy, they have another season under their belts with everyone together. They're expected, as we saw Kyrie throw up that ridiculous floater behind us. I mean, they have so much dynamic ability here. They got Kyrie doing those up and under moves. They got Gordon Hayward shooting from everywhere. They're finally potent enough where they could really win the title this year.
Speaking of one of those stars coming back, Kyrie Irving had a remarkable season last year, but then had to have the knee surgery, missed the entire playoffs. Just a couple of weeks back, he stated his, desire to stay in Boston long term. But of course, this is an opt-out year for him. How much of that do you think is genuine, him wanting to stay in Boston, compared to wanting to maybe diffuse some of the distractions that might hover over the Celtics, given his pending free agency?
I think it's totally genuine. There's no question about that. I think the reason why it's not I'm staying in Boston necessarily is that, one, you're not allowed to negotiate a contract at this point of the season. It's people use the word tampering. I don't think it's tampering, right, because he's on your team, but whatever. You're not supposed to be negotiating at this point. And there are variables that could change things here. One is he's expecting to get a 5-year maximum offer. If, let's say he gets injured or they're concerned about him getting injured, maybe they don't necessarily do that, and that's where things get a little tricky. But I mean, I don't see any reason why he's not going to stay at this point. There's no other team out there besides the Knicks, I think, that really pose a serious threat to them, and the Knicks are appealing to Kyrie for many reasons, but I think his biggest motivation right now is being in a place where he can really, truly grow his career and become one of the best players of all time, which is what his goal is, and Boston clearly is the environment and the team for him to do that with.
Tonight almost marks Gordon Hayward's 2nd debut, and officially it is his home opener with the Boston Celtics after getting injured just a couple of minutes in Cleveland last year. He's dealing with a back issue right now. What are the limitations for him, if any, in terms of minutes, in terms of back-to-backs, at least at the start of the season?
So he has back soreness. I wouldn't call it an issue because that makes it seem like it's like an injury. It's really that he hasn't been playing competitive basketball in a long time, and it's going to take a while for his body to fully adjust to that. So he's going to be dealing with a lot of soreness, and when you get back soreness, it just affects you in a way that soreness in other areas doesn't, and it's something you have to be even more cautious with. So I think that's really what that is. He is apparently going to be playing on the 2nd night of back-to-backs. He's at a 25-minute limit to start the season, according to Brad Stevens. I expect that to last probably a month or so because they don't need him to play more than that at this point. They're feeling the team out anyway. They're going to be doing some experimentation, and they don't want to push him too hard. I think early in the game, they're going to keep his minutes very short, playing 3 to 4 minute stints, and then he's playing the last 7 minutes of the game. He's closing it out, and that's what they really want to save him for.
I think one of the interesting things for me looking at this Boston Celtics roster is Terry Rozier. Brad Stevens mentioned just a few days ago about the philosophy that he needs for his team to buy in, and referenced Brock Holt of the Boston Red Sox hitting for a cycle in Game 3 against the Yankees in the Division Series, and then a DNP the next day. Terry Rozier really emerged in Kyrie Irving's absence to the point where there were scary Terry T-shirts around.
Phenomenon, yeah.
It is around TD Garden. How do you see that dynamic with Terry Rozier, who can start for many a team in the NBA? You mentioned experimentation at the very beginning. How do you see Terry Rozier's role in this? I believe he's a restricted free agent at the end of this season.
He is. It's tricky because he has a great relationship with Kyrie. Kyrie's been his mentor here. And they have a really strong bond. They call each other their brother and stuff like that. He stole all of Kyrie's shoes last year while Kyrie was out during the playoffs, with permission. But it's his career. And you know what? No matter how good friends you become with people that you work with, you've also been working your entire life to this moment. And it's not like you and I, where we're building on their careers throughout our entire lives. Terry has a decade to pull this off. He's 24 right now. By the time he's 34, he'll be on the downside of his career. He needs to take advantage of these next 10 years to become an elite player, to become the kind of star that he's always dreamt of being. And when you're stuck behind someone that has already achieved that, it's really hard to pull that off. Yep. And this team, most teams wouldn't have this issue necessarily. There's been a lot of great point guards in the past that had to leave where they were because of the way the game used to be played. Nowadays, teams like having multiple point guards on the floor, mostly because, especially Rozier and Kyrie, they're not necessarily ball-dominant choreographers, they're scorers. And you want to have as many guys that can shoot the ball as possible. The problem is that Jaylen Brown is also amazing. Jason Tatum is also one of the best prospects in the NBA. Gordon Hayward is an all-star player already who's coming back to health. There's no room for him to start unless Terry grows another 8 inches and can play center. There's no room for him to start on this team long term. The variable that can affect that is if they make a trade next summer for Anthony Davis. That's it. That's really the only player I can think of that can make that difference. There's no one else in the league that can, that they're going to trade potentially 2 starters to acquire. That's how good this team is. So Terry, he wants to get paid a lot of money, but more so he wants to grow into the player he can become. And I wouldn't blame him if he wanted to leave just because he felt, I'm never going to get a chance to be the guy that finishes the game here. And that's going to play out the entire year. Maybe he gets traded in February because the team recognizes that he's not going to want to re-sign because of that fact. So at a certain point, there's going to be some tension there just because as much as Kyrie loves Terry, as much as the team loves Terry, Terry wants something that the team just doesn't have the opportunity to offer to him, and something that I think he's earned. And that's the one thing I think with this team on a really major scale that can deter their progress towards being a champion. Or I should say, towards losing to the Warriors in the finals.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I know we're pressed for time, so a couple of really quick questions. First, Jason Tatum last year ended the playoffs, Boston's best player, I believe, in my opinion. Close to it. Yeah. If not their best player, at least those who are playing on the floor.
It's fair.
Yeah. Year 2, what do you expect?
Same thing.
Yeah.
And that's because, they're adding Kyrie and Hayward back, who are probably their 2 best players. For Tatum to hold that mantle, he needs to step it up to another level. It requires him being probably a more physically intimidating defender, someone that can really hold his own. Not that he's not already a good defender. For a rookie, he was good, actually, which was something that didn't get talked about. I was impressed with that. But he needs to be a complete scorer. Right now, he's a very well-rounded scorer. Last year, he was able to get 20 points a game in the playoffs, which is really impressive, but he had a lot of flaws to his scoring ability. He took too many mid-range jumpers, plays that he should be stepping behind the three-point line to take. When he tries to dribble and he stops real suddenly and pulls up, he's got to be able to step back and take that three. That's how you go from being a 16-point scorer to a 20-point scorer and become an all-star caliber player. So those are the things that he needs to do to actually, I'd say, make that ascension into that all-star tier where Hayward, Kyrie, and Horford already are.
The chips are in place for the Celtics. Does this almost have the tenor of maybe a championship or NBA Finals or bust season, given everything seems to be in place?
Yeah, definitely. No question. They have Toronto in their way. Toronto is stacked, but we also don't really know what they look like. This Boston team, we have a very good understanding of what they look like, and I think we know Gordon, who's really the one missing piece because we saw Kyrie last year. Gordon's the one question that we have about what does he look like, how does he fit, but we know that the system that they run is built for a guy like Gordon. It's built for a guy that can come around the screen and he can shoot it or he can dribble and pass, that he can post up on mismatches. I mean, Hayward, he's really good at everything. He's not spectacular at anything. Kyrie has a few traits where he is pretty much the best in the game at. Hayward is a good starter level player at every little facet of the game, and and I would say his b-ball IQ is borderline elite, and that's what really puts him over the edge. So this team isn't adding some sort of like kind of I wouldn't say one-dimensional player, but a player that's like very skilled in one specific area. They're adding a guy that does everything. He's like the Al Horford of the perimeter. He does every little thing really well, so that it just makes them more diverse in what they can run, and it makes them more consistent. And consistency on offense was their biggest weakness last year, and also being able to close it out because they didn't have a dominant closer at the end. Now they've got two guys that can do that really well.
Jared Weiss, thank you so very much for being guest numero uno on ALOST in the Shuffle. Really appreciate it. Thank you for the time.
Man. Thanks for having me.
All right.